Hey guys, this is Mark.
This is Michelle.
And it is another episode of This is Mark and Michelle.
Tonight we're going to continue talking about the difficulty of autism.
The difficulties or the problems caused by autism. And
tonight we're going to do emotional issues.
We are. And this is actually one of the main groups of symptoms in autism, and the inability to read other people's emotions. Oddly enough, the inability to read your own emotions.
To me, it's the most detrimental of them all.
Yes, because it affects communication. Truthfully, it affects everything.
Everything.
It really does, and we'll go into that here. In fact, let's see here. Right. Okay. All right. So let's talk about one that you guys have heard me talk about. And this is to me, this is an important point because I had this problem, and I've heard from so many parents and caregivers of autistic kids that this is a problem. Lack of motivation.
Yes. How many times did I call you Homer Simpson? Do you remember me?
No, I don't think I don't remember you calling me Homer Simpson. You probably did.
I did.
So
because you looked lazy.
Yes. Well, I do remember you doing that once when we lived in St. Louis the first time, the only time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I appeared lazy, but I remember teachers telling me I was lazy, not just in high school, in college as well. And I wasn't. I tried as hard as I could. I mean, I attempted my work. There's one viewer. Hey, viewer, thanks for joining us. I attempted everything and tried to keep on it. But something that I discovered as I recovered, and I think it was really within that first year, was that as I started recovering, as I started healing up, I started feeling strong pushes towards certain things. Computers being one, Michelle being another, cooking being another. I had always cooked. I've always cooked, but I felt enough motivation to cook even as an autistic person to know to do that. But what the big revelation to me was that motivation is a feeling. It really is. You get feelings of, oh, I want to do this, of desire to participate in something or do something. There's a second viewer, and I don't ever really remember feeling those feelings. When I was an autistic person, if I liked something, I would be interested in it for the information. But I don't think I could ever say I had feelings over it. You know what I mean? Feelings of joy. Truthfully, I didn't really know what joy was until well into recovery. And that feeling of ecstatic happiness that you get sometimes, and now more regularly I get, I didn't have that feeling when I was autistic. I didn't know what it was.
Which just triggered in my brain the first time you felt two feelings at once. And that's emotional.
Well, it is, and that is an emotional thing. When we first discovered I had high functioning autism, we were sitting in the living room in an older house, and she said, well, you can have hundreds, even thousands of different kinds of emotions. And I looked at her and I said, no, you can't. Yes, you can. I thought, okay, that was a revelation to me, because I had just discovered that I was autistic. So I had no clue about recovery or emotions or anything else. And so after starting recovery, and maybe about a year on, I don't exactly remember when, but Michelle and I were going over to my mom and dad's. Michelle said something that made me mad. And because it was easy to make me mad as an autistic person.
Yes.
And it's easy to make other autistic people mad too, I see now. But we were going over to my mom and dad. She said something that annoyed me. We got over there, and then she said something that made me laugh. I was actually angry and laughing at the same time. That was weird. It's still strange to think that can be the case. But since then, I can feel, now I can regularly feel a couple or three emotions at a time.
So that would have been alexithymia, right?
Alexithymia. Alexithymia is a psychological condition where you have, as a person, you have the inability, you are unable to identify or label your own emotions. So in other words, you're unable to read your emotional state, literally.
So then what is it that you're not feeling the emotion? So why couldn't you feel angry and laugh at the same time?
I think because the neural nets had been starved for proper nutrition, and the brain chemistry was also incorrect or faulty. And so because of that, my brain couldn't multitask emotionally. It could only give me one emotion at a time. And even then, very basic ones like anger, fear, frustration. And truthfully, that's about all I felt, because I don't remember happy at all when I was an autistic person. What I remember was anger, fear, and frustration. Those are the three emotions that I was familiar with as an autistic person. Just don't remember any other ones.
Going back to the lack of motivation, didn't we recently find an article that talked about that?
Mm-hmm. There was an article that I posted recently, and it was conducted by scientific researchers at Emory University. And I used to live around the corner from Emory, but in Atlanta. And the article basically pointed out that acute inflammation, especially when you experience it when you're sick or you have severe allergies or something like that, acute brain or sinus inflammation basically dampens a system in your brain that controls motivation.
Is that the one that had the dopamine that talked about?
Yeah,
dopamine?
I don't remember if it upregulated or downregulated dopamine, but the article pointed out that with acute inflammation, those sufferers lacked motivation. And it's easy enough to take this one step further and say that people with chronic inflammation lack motivation as well, but they lack it chronically instead of acutely.
Yes.
Right? And so I read the article and I posted it, but that's an important point. Inflammation has been associated with autism quite consistently in scientific literature that I've seen. And that being the case, that means your child with autism or your loved one with autism is chronically inflamed. Well, again, if you're chronically inflamed, then you lack motivation, because inflammation is basically suppressing the area of your brain that produces motivational feelings.
From dopamine.
Right, from dopamine.
Interesting.
So,
what about lack of smiling? That's always perplexed me.
Well, it probably perplexes you because you've always naturally smiled when the situations come along, right?
I can't help it.
I was talking with one of a coworker at work, and she has a daughter on the spectrum, and while I don't think she thinks she's on the spectrum, she seems to have enough of the traits as well. And I remember when I was autistic, people would look at me. I didn't have, a lot of times I had a sour look on my face, especially as I got older. a grumpy look. We'll go with that.
Curmudgeonly
Look, right? And so I would have that look. And as I got older, that curmudgeonly look was present more often. But I would quite often, sometimes once a week, tell people would look at me and say, well, hey, come on, smile. Oh, I hated that so much. And Michelle knows.
Yes.
But what it is when I was autistic, I couldn't feel the feelings that would make me just crack a smile.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't. I don't know if that's the case for all autistic people, but I think it's probably the case for a lot of them. And but since recovery, probably about 2 years in, I started having instances where I would think of something and I would just immediately smile.
You did say once, you said, I thought about you at work and it made me smile and I didn't even mean to.
Yeah, exactly. and that happens now. See, I can think of things and I immediately smile. But see, I could think of things when I was autistic and they wouldn't make me smile. It's lack of smiling isn't because autistic people are grumpy or mean or mad or anything. Well, they might be grumpy, which totally I get. But it just comes from not feeling feelings that prompt an automatic smiling response, because I was that way. And so now coming out of it, there's all kinds of things that make me smile now, which is cool, because you probably heard the thing smiling is contagious. When I was autistic, I thought that was utter crap. Right? And I probably said so.
You did.
Yeah. And so, but now I totally get why smiling is contagious. I wouldn't literally say it is, because I can smile at people at work and they're still as straight face as everything else.
Well, they're probably autistic.
Well, probably. And so, but having an automatic smiling response now is awesome.
Let's talk about the limited emotional vocabulary. We've had some discussions about that tonight.
Yes, we have. We are having our book, which is a transcription of a lot of the lives, of very pertinent live Facebook lives. This is Mark and Michelle episodes. And I'm finding that, and I've talked about this with some of my coworkers. I should say all women coworkers, because they've been able to help me make sense of emotions more. Oh, sorry, Marlo. But
if you have some mango in the house,
good, get you it.
Mango helps with sleep and calm. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. But what I'm finding is I didn't know what an emotion was until I felt it for the first time. And so blame, this is a good example. Blame was one of the earliest emotions I felt. And and when I first felt that, I thought, ew, this is disgusting, because it's a combination. Blame seems to be a combination of guilt and shame. And so that would be one of the first times, that might work.
Try it.
So, okay, we're going to have to wait till you're down here. Okay.
Keep going.
So, as another example, having felt joy for the first time, I actually knew what it really meant then, because I always heard these words, but I've realized I couldn't. It's just like a word. You might hear a word you don't know, but until you learn the meaning of that word, you don't really know that word. Well, but even more than that, there are emotional connotations to words.
May I tell a story?
Yes.
We used to help a young lady who was pretty severe, but was still verbal. And we got her going on the GAPS diet. This was before we switched to medical medium. She'd probably do a lot better on medical medium now.
Mm-hmm.
But we went to her house to visit with her, and she asked us if we wanted some tea. So she handed us the box, and she said, handed the pamphlet that was inside the tea.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, here's the propaganda. Rather than advertisement. And I giggled. And she said, I don't know why people giggle when I say that, but I say it because people giggle. I said, well, because propaganda has undertones of
you said manipulation and negative emotions,
and
hurtful emotions.
She had no idea that those emotions were attached to that word.
Mm-hmm.
That is an example of having a limited emotional vocabulary.
Yes, it is. She was limited because she only understood the literal meaning of that word.
Which is.
I
wonder what it is.
Well, I guess the best way would be advertisements aimed at political ends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that being just a straightforward, not even discussing the emotions behind it.
Right.
But exactly, she understood only the literal meaning of that term, and she couldn't understand. See, had she not been autistic, she wouldn't have said that about propaganda in the first place, and would have immediately understood why everybody giggled, because she would have giggled too, right?
Right.
Which is why autistic people don't get a lot of subtle jokes.
Right.
Because they're
the
emotional
meetings.
And see, and that's something too. Humor has come on for me.
Right.
And
Mark thinks he's really funny.
Well, you think I'm really funny. You're talking about. And but it's fascinating because a lot of humor, NT humor, I should say, is very emotional. And really what it has to do with one of my favorite shows, and she likes it too, but it's difficult to watch, is called The IT Crowd. See,
I love that show.
Right? And
oh my goodness, they squeeze you.
They do.
Emotionally.
And now I get it. It's intense. And but it twists you up. And but what it is the layering of contradictory emotions.
Yes.
And it just makes you go. So one night I look over while we're watching that, she's over there going, you know, and I totally understood why she didn't watch TV, because she's told me all these years I don't watch TV because it just kills me.
Yeah.
Well, she was over there white knuckling the chair and just like, ah, you know. And when I saw that look, I'm like, all right, let's turn it off. And you know, but I get the emotions behind humor now, and that's awesome.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I think poor sense of self is very important.
Okay, all right. Poor sense of self. My definition of a sense of self, now I haven't looked it up psychologically or whatever else, but in my experience, a sense of self is this: knowing who you are emotionally. Knowing why you're kind to yourself, why you're kind to others. Knowing your emotional reactions in situations. But then it's knowing the emotions that you have around people in your life, specific people like her, or coworkers, or groups of people. I think knowing a sense of self is really knowing the emotional side of you. And again, when I was autistic, alexithymia blocked me from knowing that emotional side of myself and really knowing who I was.
Talk about when you remembered you were looking out your eye holes. You were pretty young.
Well, this was kindergarten, and so I was 5 or 6 years old. But I distinctly remember twice, at least 3 times, I felt like I was inside a shell. The shell was my body, but I was inside this shell. And I didn't fully fit inside it. In fact, I was much smaller than the inside of the shell. Well, I would look up and I would see light coming through these 2, windows. Well, I had to walk up to them and climb up on the inside of this shell to be able to look out of them, and then I could see the world. And so I was disconnected. I felt disconnected from the inside of my body.
So what was astounding about that coming on during recovery?
Because as I recovered, I started to feel more and more connected to my body. Because there were times when I was autistic, I would look at my arm and I go, is this real? And I would do that to other people too. I remember a couple of girls that were in my college classes, and I remember when I first met them, walking up to them and poking them in the arm and asking them outright. I did this to Michelle too, asking them outright, are you real? And what I realized is, and I talked about this in another live, is that you know what's real by how it makes you feel. You know what's real because it evokes an emotion in you. And so now she evokes love and fun and joy at times and laughter and anger.
I was going to say, when you're going to get to the negative stuff.
I was building it up. And so, and all of that stuff now. And now I know we are real. Because as an autistic person, I didn't know anything was real.
We are just about out of time. And I can't find my slides.
There you go.
Next.
Oh,
Next, we will talk about social issues.
Yeah, that's right. And that'll be tomorrow night at 10:45, the same time. Nada, go back and watch the live from tonight. You'll love it because it's very important. And then remember, stay on that heavy metal detox smoothie. Stay on that celery juice. And we will see you guys tomorrow night at 10:45. Bye-bye.
Bye.